From across time and space and throughout the multiverse, listen as multiple generations of geeks come together to discuss the iconic characters, events, and franchises that make up the very fabric of pop culture as we know it. Let Your Geek Side Show presents Then and Now. Hey guys, this is Kitty.
And this is Sam.
And we are coming to you from the Sideshow Studios in Southern California. This week, we are starting on a journey to become the very best, like no one ever was. From humble roots in Pallet Town to global acclaim, this particular monster-catching franchise has evolved across generations, spanning video games, trading cards, animated films, and even augmented reality apps. Whether you've completed your national dex and captured over 800 creatures, or you think they're all named Pikachu, it's never too late to start your adventure towards Victory Road. Pick your starter and come along because this is Pokemon Then and Now. Well, all right, Sam, thank you for joining me this week.
Yeah, no problem.
I think this was a highly anticipated topic that I really wanted to get to, but it wasn't quite the right time when we initially pitched it. But I think this is a good time to catch people up on where Pokemon started and where it's headed.
Yeah, I will use any excuse I can to talk Pokemon because this was what I lived and breathed in elementary, middle, high school, college. Today, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Pokemon is a lifestyle. I mean, there are some of us who have been on this Pokemon journey for quite some time, and there's some people who are a little newer to it. I mean, you may have just seen or heard about Detective Pikachu and said, why the heck is Ryan Reynolds voicing a Pokemon? Or you might be excited about all the new Nintendo Switch news. I mean, they're pretty big about that. Or you might, I know some people who just play the Pokemon Go app and they don't even really have a familiarity with the game.
Yeah, they just kind of, Pokemon Go is how they kind of get there. All right, I'm still into Pokemon type of thing.
Yeah, or like, I'm going to get some exercise. I mean, it's very versatile for that. This is a fun topic. It's a big topic.
Huge.
Lots of aspects of fandom to this one. But I don't know. It might be fun. What was your first Pokemon game?
Pokemon Red. No, yeah, it was Pokemon Red. What is it? I had Red. The funny thing was my mother, she did this thing where she would buy me one version and she would buy my younger brother Giovanni the other version. So we both had a Game Boy. We each had a link cable, and then we both had the
you had to
versions.
sit like 6 inches away from each other to get the games to connect.
And then what it eventually evolved into was I was the one who took it like super serious. Like I think at the end of like Ruby and Sapphire, that generation, I put maybe 600 or 700 hours into that game. Like,
wow.
Yeah, I was the type. I was playing it when my mom drove me to and from school. I was playing it during recess. Like, I was way into that one. So I eventually just took it from my brother and was like, all right, I'm just going to be doing both these versions, trading the Pokemon to mine, and then I'll give it back to you and you can have it. He's like, where's my starter? Where's my legendary? And I'm like, I don't know. Meanwhile,
you were wheeling and dealing.
Over here in my own PC in the game. Just like, yeah, I got
very funny. I had a similar experience with my younger brother when he started getting into the video games. My mom was like, you have to buy the opposite version so no one fights. But then and thankfully for a lot of the versions, like our tastes aligned with who wanted which version.
Right.
But my first was the special edition yellow. I had my little pink Game Boy Color, which actually still functions to this day. And so I had the one where you could walk around with Pikachu.
With Pikachu?
Yeah. But Pokemon Crystal, I think, was the first one for me that I learned to love. And it was also the first one I maxed out an entire team of level 100s, like in a legitimate fashion. Before action replays came in.
Yeah. Like Gold and Silver were the ones I think I played the least. But I always really regret that. Like, because every time I pick them up and play them, I'm always like, man, I feel like if I played this as a kid, I would love this one the most. But Ruby and Sapphire was the one that I like, all right, this is it. So. Yeah.
It's an ingenious franchise that really has, it really gives you that challenge of like, especially the English motto, gotta catch 'em all. Like, even if you don't really want to, you have your favorites. It's like, oh man, but what if I did? Like completionist. Like this is like one of the original completionist type game challenges. Now, just a brief history. Pokemon was created in 1995 by Satoshi Tajiri, but it wasn't published until 1996. And then the anime, I believe, debuted in 97.
97, yeah.
Yeah, so it all came out pretty closely. But it was inspired by... It was inspired by the hobby of insect collecting, and the development team was just like, oh, like we really enjoy just the simple kind of hobby of catching bugs, studying them, and of course, Pokemon is a portmanteau of pocket and monsters. A lot of the media, sometimes you see it referred to as pocket monsters. So it really had like a sweet and humble beginning, and of course, any franchise that lives this long isn't without some controversy, but I think most of that has been assuaged. A lot of people took issue with the first of all, it's monsters, so people will take issue with that. and the making them fight.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting also because I mean it's like even in the trading card game, it's like you've got all these different types of trading card games like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, where it's like you do have to fight the characters against one another. But I think in recent years they've kind of taken more strides narratively to like ensure that they push the idea of respecting your Pokemon. I mean, like there's the mini games in some of the games where it's like you can feed them and dress them up and stuff.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing too, is like even within like the realm of the anime and stuff like that, like, yeah, gotta catch 'em all is like the main, I would say, catchphrase of the show. But it's, you know, right next to gotta catch 'em all, there's also like, hey, there's the idea of establishing relationships with your Pokemon and becoming their best. You're like you and they are becoming each other's best friend type of thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say the lyric in the absolutely banging intro song is it's you and me, you're my best friend. I didn't get those in the right order, but like you're my best friend in a world we must defend.
And it's like, this is gonna sound kind of lame, but it's like you go back and watch Mewtwo Strikes Back. I think it was the first Pokemon movie. That was the theme of the entire movie was just the bond that these different trainers, Ash included, had with their Pokemon. And what happened to them as people when they were suddenly separated from them. It wasn't a matter of like they felt powerless. It was the matter of like, that's my best friend. How dare you take my best friend away from me? And then, you know, Mew and Mewtwo kind of like see that, and it's part of what they realize as to like, oh, this is what the strength of humanity in Pokemon is, blah, blah, blah. Like,
and the mindless cloning and the violence therein. But then it's like, no, these are all beings who are deserving of love and respect, and I mean, it's like having cute, colorful dogs and stuff.
There's also kind of like a meta. What is it? They made a decision in Pokemon. I believe it's Black and White. Yeah, Black and White, because that was with Reshiram and Zekrom. The fact that people were capturing Pokemon and using them to battle each other, that was a main theme in that game as well, because there's a rival character who goes by the name of N, just N, who he doesn't capture Pokemon. He convinces them to kind of join with him through sheer, I don't want to say will or charisma, because he's not a person who's like an Iron Fist type of character. He's just like, hey, if you want to come along with me and live life alongside me, you're welcome to do that. I'm not going to put you in a Pokeball. I'm not going to capture you. I'm not going to force you to fight if you don't want to. And he was very much a different kind of arch rival. I don't even want to say arch rival. He's just very much a character that is against kind of what Pokemon up to that point was. And it makes you as the character kind of question like, well, like, is capturing Pokemon okay? And, you know, I kind of forget how the game ended, but I do remember that character of N and that question he posed.
Yeah.
And the whole everything.
And in the earliest games, I mean, because these began as children's games, and I think ultimately they do remain as children's games, but there is a great staying power with the fandom and the fact that they keep adding to each generation. But originally it was as simple as pick the one that you want to go out into the world with you. You're going to take on this epic journey, but you've got a rival character who's just going to make the contrary choice to you just because he wants to be better than you. And so there was for a while that element of like, it's like, okay, there wasn't a ton of narrative depth to the first couple games. You do meet a lot of really interesting characters, like Bill with the PC when he like turns himself into a Pokemon, and like, which was like almost the predecessor to the Detective Pikachu film. But as the games have evolved, you do get I loved Ruby and Sapphire with the Team Aqua and Magma and the legendaries that had to deal with
the reversal dynamic between the two games.
Yeah, and the idea that the legendaries were connected to the Earth and respecting the Earth, and then how people wanted to like kind of manipulate like, oh, we need to get rid of take over the sea and take over the land.
Right.
And I do like that dynamic that they come up with, because a lot of the earlier stuff is just mostly fun, colorful creatures, some Japanese history and culture. All the regions are shaped like in places in Japan. But the later games really do have a surprising amount of heart to them that I think a lot of people they're like, it's just a fighting game. Or when the formula gets repetitive over the years, there's a lot to be said for the storylines. Now, it began as a video game series, and I'm sure I actually didn't write down when the card game started, but I'm sure that followed pretty closely.
I think that was also 97.
96 or 97.
96 or 97.
Yeah, because I think those earliest holographic Charizards have like the copyright date for
yeah, I think
was it Wizards?
Wizards of the Coast was the one who distributed it in America, and I think Holo Charizard was from Base Set. He was like,
that was like
Yeah.
You were the king of the schoolyard if you had one of those suckers.
That's the thing is like, that's almost like, hey, like, do you collect Pokemon cards? Where's your Holo Charizard at? Where's your Holo Venusaur, your Holo Blastoise?
We did a podcast for Fictional Dragons in Gaming, and Charizard was our top choice. He is the most highly coveted of those.
There's actually,
things.
it's funny. There's a card right now, as of us recording this podcast. They came out with a new set of Pokemon cards, Hidden Fates. There's what's known as a shiny card in that. It's a shiny Charizard. So Charizard is black and blue.
Oh, okay.
That card, I think, is worth, at this point, close to $400.
Ooh, yeah. Oh my goodness.
And if you get it PSA graded, it's worth even more. So.
I worked in a comic book store, and one of my regular shifts was the Saturday managing the Pokemon games, and everyone would pay their little buy-in fee, and they'd all get a free pack of Pokemon cards, and then they could buy more of them. And some of the children who were regular enough attending these things, they would only buy the cards from me because one time they had watched a kid go, hey, can you, like, I really, really, really want a I think it was a Mega Charizard EX, which
EX,
I didn't follow the card game religiously. I collected them for the cute artwork.
Right.
And I was like, when they got to the EX cards, I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, they have GX cards, and now they're moving on to Z cards.
Oh, no, don't tell me that. But the kid was like, I really, really want one. And I was like, look, I can't promise you, but I'm gonna shuffle these around, and I'll pick one that feels good. And then, of course, the kid got the card he wanted, and rumor quickly spread that I had the magic touch, and some kids would like only buy their cards from me, which was pretty funny. But I'm sure you know very well the joy of like opening the puckered little holo foil package and like just pulling out those cards. And of course, there's like even a way that like they shuffle them so the rarest one ends up at the back while you.
Well, now they have it to where the rarest one is kind of in the center of the pack. It's to stop people from like just going to the very back card and being like, is this the rare card? Okay, I want this pack type of thing. So
and it's kind of weird. People think, oh, the shiny paint on the card weighs like a gram more, and it's like, oh my goodness, people are.
They're actually unweighable now.
Really?
They've figured out a way. They've figured out a way to make it to where you can't really pack weigh as.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you just can't really do it anymore.
Yeah. So for those of you who may or may not be familiar, like first of all, this is another testament to the intensity of people who want to complete their Pokemon journeys, get those cards they want. The trading pack cards, people would go to stores, and if the booster boxes were open, they would take individual packs and try to weigh them against each other to determine the rarity of getting a card that weighs like almost an infinitesimal fraction more because it has the shiny holographic material on it. Now, talking about the evolution, we had original 151. I mean, originally it was 150, and then the 151 was such a big deal. But now we're over 800, and right now the number is in flux because they are introducing new Pokemon for the Nintendo Switch versions of the game Sword and Shield.
They finally gave my boy Farfetch'd a evolution. Yay.
I like the teapot ghost. It's so much fun.
Yeah. I like the little demon. Everybody's hating on the little imp demon. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And so that's the fun thing is that like people also like to joke that like, oh, Pokemon's run out of creativity. They made a ghost that lives in a teapot. The first generation had a pile of eggs that turned into a coconut tree. Like, but the characters in the game are so charming and enjoyable, which I think even if you don't recognize, because people even love to make their own fan Pokemon, which is a popular thing, or speculate what the evolutions of the new starters are going to look like. It is this kind of zeitgeist thing that has captured our imagination for like as much as people love the Dungeons and Dragons monster manual, the Pokemon Pokedex is just as bright and interesting.
The smart thing too is the Pokemon Company has kind of like caught on to the fact that stuff kind of happens. So what they'll do is they'll put out like very, very vague promotional images, or they'll tease a certain Pokemon at certain points, and they kind of leave it up to the audience to kind of generate that own hype on their own. And that's where you get the whole people like theorizing, okay, this is what the first starters are going to be. This is good. This is what this person's evolution is going to look like. This is like, there was a person, I think on Reddit I saw, who completely called what Surf Fetched was going to look like. The only difference was just the eyes.
Oh, wow.
But they based it all off of the the mosaic filtered image that the Pokemon Company had put out. And yeah, when they put out Surf Fetched's reveal, I went right back to that thread, and sure enough, there were like over 1,000 replies or something crazy, just being like, dude, you nailed it, holy cow. And it's like, yeah, it's so cool seeing that.
And the fandom is extremely intense, but not without merit. I mean, the formula of a Pokemon game, I don't want to say they're formulaic. I mean, there is a formula to the game, but they always do manage to add something engaging. Yeah. I mean, we were talking about the animated series because we were rewatching Indigo League recently, and it was like, oh man, I think the formula in the TV show is that Ash Ketchum is never going to win a battle to get a badge. He's going to always help someone out in like a situation that has nothing to do with battling Pokemon, which I think is that was never a mechanic in the game, but it is cool to see that in the television series. It's like, oh, you can help Pokemon. You and your Pokemon can help in extraordinary situations and still be deserving of the signifiers that you have a mastery over your relationship with the Pokemon. But for a while, it seemed like Ash Ketchum, the perpetual 10-year-old, was never going to get his due. But there have been over 1,000 episodes of the animated series in which Ash Ketchum has starred. And in the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime, which is currently going on, Ash Ketchum just won the Pokemon League for the first time. So it has been, how many years is that now?
Over 20.
22 years since he debuted. And there's, I mean, no idea where they're going to go next from that, but it is really exciting. And not only that, there's been a number of animated films. I think 22 animated films. Yeah,
there's been over 20 something animated films, like a plethora of the shorts.
I remember seeing a couple of them in theaters, particularly I think it was Pokemon 2001 with the Unknowns and Entei and Suicune.
Yep, that was after Pokemon 2000.
Yeah, and a lot of them get paired with promotional trading cards, which is really fun. There was
so fun.
Pokemon the first movie, but there's been a number of manga, some of which never actually got translated from Japanese, and so they're only Japanese, but a lot have been translated into English. Of course, the trading card game, and there was even a Monopoly game put out for Pokemon, which is, it's just, there's so much, the desire to, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast and you're familiar with Sideshow, you probably understand the desire to collect things. And so this game has perfectly tapped, they've hit a vein with the fans of the desire to collect, pick your favorites, create teams. My guy's better than your guy. But like in the end, everybody just wants to enjoy the things they enjoy the most. And Pokemon has even transcended like just the gaming aspect. Pikachu has been a Macy's Day Parade balloon several times, and the franchise is globally popular, and a lot of the characters have ascended to icon status, none more so than Pikachu, of course.
They're trying to get Eevee up there too. Like you'll notice in a lot of like
one of my favorites.
Eevee, like Eevee's up there for me. Vulpix is up there for me for sure. Yeah. But yeah, Eevee and a lot of the Japanese promotional stuff that they're putting out now, Eevee's right up there with Pikachu. Like they're almost like brothers kind of thing. So it's interesting to see where they're going with that. I think they're doing it just because Eevee has like all the different evolutions.
Yeah, it's a very easy to imprint upon, impress upon. You can choose which path you want it to be. You can leave it normal. You can have it evolve. Which, yes, of course, the evolution aspect of the games is also one that's been side-eyed. But I think largely at this point, a lot of people have come to accept the kind of colossal monolith that Pokemon is. And Pokemon's even had an impact on science. There's a couple of species of creatures named after Pokemon. I'm gonna mispronounce these, but there's the Stentorceps Weedlei, named after Weedle.
Right.
There's the Aerodactylus Scolopasiceps. I'm not a scientist. And there's a protein. There's a naturally occurring protein that they now call Pikachurin.
Okay.
So yeah,
wow.
I mean, it's even made an impact on science, which is crazy when you think about it.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's so much that goes on in all of the universes. Really cool. One of my personal favorite things from the last couple of years, last decade at least, was the introduction of Twitch streaming for Twitch Plays Pokemon. Have you heard of that one?
Yes. Yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar, Twitch Plays Pokemon was a loaded copy of the first they started with Pokemon Red, I believe, and the game responded
to input commands that people would put in the chat.
Yes, and so it was parsing the player chat, but this game had over 1.1 million players, not all at once, but over the course of the
unique hits type of thing.
Over the course of the 16 days and 9 hours, 55 minutes, and 4 seconds it took them to complete Pokemon Red.
Yeah.
It had 1.1 million unique users trying to control the character, give the Pokemon names and commands, but of course everyone thinks, oh, he should move up. So then 20 people type he should move up and your character is out of bounds and just it was insane, but it was this giant community experiment that actually worked, and they've gone through I think at least a dozen of the Pokemon games. Yeah.
It's funny, I was there, or I was like joining into that Twitch chat whenever I could just to see, and I think by the end of it, like, okay, so if you go back and like you can probably read an entire book on the entire process of that, because there were so many ups and downs, like, you know, getting through gym leaders or getting through different trainers, like it was just like it was such a difficult thing to do, because it's like literally a chat room filled with like 2,000 to 3,000 people at one point, all trying to input different commands, and it's of course filled with trolls who are trying to do the exact opposite. So anytime,
fascinating social experiment.
Yeah, anytime they would step into a Pokemon Center to like, what is it? That was the goal of like all the trolls, was to get people to go into a Pokemon Center, get them to go into the PC, and then release all their Pokemon. And that happened a few times. I think they got rid of the Charmeleon, which was the player character starter Pokemon that they had. But the one thing that ran through the entire time was this Helix fossil.
I was about to say, Helix fossil.
That they kept, and they managed to turn it into an Omanite, evolve it into an Omastar, and like the whole thing was just, the biggest meme I would say that came out of that was just praise Helix, because Helix will lead us to what is it? Helix will lead us to the end. And I think it was like, what? It's either praise Helix or anarchy or something like that, or anarchy or democracy.
They spawned memes of people just trying to collectively, and it's almost like that idea where it's like, oh, if you put enough monkeys in a room with typewriters, will they write Shakespeare? It's like, if you put enough people in a Twitch chat, will they beat Pokemon? And yes
they will.
It takes them 16 days to do it, but
I think my favorite Pokemon from that entire experience was a Venomoth named ATV. So there was like, everybody was just a variation of A, because like A is the first letter and that's what everybody would hit.
Yeah. It's just a fascinating thing, and that so many people would be interested in trying to take a part of that. Now, I think the reason I wanted to do this podcast at some point during the summer was, I mean, we've got the Pokemon Switch edition, or the Nintendo Switch games coming up soon, but we are just on the
16th or something.
Yeah, something like that. Very, very, very soon.
15th. Yeah, sorry.
Oof. Right around the time that Disney Plus comes out too. I'm going to be busy.
Yeah, right around the time Death Stranding comes out. It's like, oh, which should I pick? Yeah.
It was nice knowing you. We'll have to bank a bunch of these podcasts so we can go on hiatus. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. But more so, the big achievement of this year, besides Ash winning the Pokemon League, good for him. We had a live action, or as live action as you can get with Pokemon, movie by Legendary Entertainment. So we had Detective Pikachu, which actually was based on a not just the standard Pokemon games, it was based on a sub game called Detective Pikachu, which you played as a child who had a talking Pikachu. I bit my tongue. Pikachu as your partner. And there was a lot of people wanted him to be voiced by Danny DeVito, and there was all this stuff. Like, people like had expectations, but also people were really scared because there's a video game movie curse. A lot of
video game movies not making money.
Yeah, a lot of adaptations don't live up and don't make money. But
do you know which video game movie has made the most money out of all the ones that have come out? I'll give you a hint, because I know it's dead air right now. It's Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider's made the most money. I was going to say, I think it's Tomb Raider. Yeah. My brain was going to go, it's not the Super Mario Bros. Movie. But I think Pikachu came either really close or might have beaten it. But yeah. Or Detective Pikachu did, sorry.
Yeah, and that was fun because opening weekend they gave out packs of cards with the live action
versions of the characters.
Yeah, and that was really fun. One of the things that warmed my heart the most was the influx of Rhyme Sonas, which is what people were calling them, was who would you be in Rhyme City, which is this city that promotes
Yeah,
coexistence between the Pokemon
and who would your
humans.
what do they call him in the movie? Companion or partner? Partner.
Yeah, partner Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. Who would your partner Pokemon be? That was really cool.
Yeah, and it was fun actually to see the battles portrayed as like an underground circuit, but like Pokemon are helping people like do daily jobs and stuff, and it was very cute. But
Loudred as the speakers. Sorry, I'm like totally. I keep cutting you off. My bad.
No,
but
it's all good.
yeah,
like it was such just an exciting experience to see. Like, oh my goodness, they put this Pokemon here and here, and I think that was the first time. It was a big wish fulfillment for a lot of people, myself included, for like the first time actually seeing people and Pokemon not in an animated function and say, okay, this is how these things would practically look.
Yeah, for sure.
And there were some gripes with some of the design translations, but like
Mewtwo's teeth,
Jigglypuff having fur, but then you remember it's a balloon Pokemon, and otherwise it would look latexy. But ultimately it was just a really big wish fulfillment. It was actually a pretty good film. Ryan Reynolds was great as Pikachu.
Yeah.
But it was just that was the first kind of realization of like what would it actually be like to live in a Pokemon world, and I think fans were kind of clamoring for more, and so that hopefully that gives people cues like this franchise is still going. There's still a great interest in it, and that was a place that they had never touched upon before. Was a live action film, and so that was a huge achievement for the franchise this year, which was really cool.
Yeah, they did it so great. I thought it was really neat too how they like. Some people might complain like, oh, they just borrowed a lot of stuff from Mewtwo Strikes Back, or like a lot of like popular things that you see in a lot of Pokemon movies. Like, okay, the fact that Mewtwo is like, hunched inside of like a little capsule filled with water and he's using his psychic abilities. It's like, oh, they just ripped that off of Mewtwo Strikes Back, blah, blah. And it's like, no, like when people think, when people that aren't as like in the deep end with Pokemon as like someone like you and I are, like when they think of Pokemon, they probably think of that image of Mewtwo in the water tank, like, being experimented on. So it's like for them to include that kind of imagery that people are familiar with, and then also introduce them to newer things, like, the fact that Lickitung, like when he licks people, there's like just a ton of drool everywhere. It's like, it's they paid attention to a lot of like very minute details, which I thought was really neat.
And I think one of the best parts also is obviously they can't put all 800 Pokemon in a movie, but I hope we get enough successive sequels or spin-offs in that world that we get to see more. But I'd say in total, there were probably about 50 Pokemon they realized on screen. And there were at least 3 or 4 or even 5 from like almost every generation. And so at any point, I mean, obviously, if you only knew the first generation, you were glomming onto Pikachu, but there were quite a few recognizable faces. I mean, we had Gyarados, we had Charizard, we had Ditto, who's actually my favorite Pokemon because as a child, I was the
Snubbull, Bulbasaur.
I was the weak child who couldn't decide which Pokemon was their favorite, so I picked the Pokemon who could be every Pokemon. But yeah, I know, it was really bad.
So Mewtwo.
But actually, one of my actual favorites is Totodile. I think one of the most underappreciated of the starters. Little tiny,
yeah.
Little, and that's the other fun thing is like the unique sounds they make. But yeah, so a parent who maybe or someone of our generation who played since the original games could take a niece, a nephew, a child, and there would be enough knowledge of all the generations between. Like you're like, okay, I see some Pokemon I recognize. There's some that I don't, but there's some that the younger generations recognize if they don't know all of them. And it was just a really cool experience. And I think that was one of the final steps Pokemon needed to take.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, it's funny. Yeah, it was a live action movie a lot of people wanted to see, and they also wanted to see a main console game.
Yes.
In what Sword and Shield is becoming, which is like, a main console game that allows you to kind of explore world freeform. You're not locked into a directional unit. You're not locked into like a handheld game type of thing.
And it's not even just a linear RPG. There are places where you can go and take a rest and engage in mini games and
you can change what your character looks like. That's like the best part. I love doing that.
As the games have evolved, they've taken more care with the narrative, but also the inclusion of the fans and like giving people the option to choose. Because in earlier games, you were pegged into one of like you could only be red.
You could only be a boy.
You could only be a boy, and then you could choose are you a boy or a girl, and then you have all these customization options. And as the graphics get better, you can really personalize the trainer to your own self. And then I think we're kind of running up to I think almost everything that we wanted to talk about. But one of the things I forgot we touched upon in the beginning is Pokemon Go. That's like also That came out in 2016, was one of the other steps Pokemon needed to take to stay relevant. For the casual gamer, that is definitely not, I mean, it is a completionist thing if you're really into it, but it is perfect for the casual gamer. It's a walk-around game. It uses in-world maps. It encourages exercise. There was, of course, initially a wave of either people trespassing where they shouldn't be because of certain Pokestops, or there were injuries related to not paying
people
attention.
needed to learn just kind of boundaries within it. But
Yeah.
I feel like normal folks, I don't want to say, well, not normal folks, but just like well-adjusted folks kind of picked up on it quick. It's like, okay, yeah, this is private property, probably shouldn't be going here.
But yeah, and by this point, I think the game has mostly smoothed out all those kinks, and it is really just a fun casual user experience that doesn't demand as rigorous attention as the Pokemon games do.
Yeah, I thought Pokemon Go, it was so crazy when that game first came out, because I had people messaging me from middle school who downloaded it, or either they downloaded it or their kids, their like 5-year-old downloaded it. And they're like, hey, do you remember anything about Pokemon? Like which one is it? And I'm like, wait, what? You're playing Pokemon? Like, these are people that like they used to be like super sport jockeys, blah, blah, blah. And then the craziest part was when my mother messaged me about it, because she's like, hey, let's go downtown and hunt for some Pokemon. And I'm like, this is so weird. What planet am I on right now? And then like going to places like Venice Beach or like really popular destinations. Like Venice Beach for sure. Like there were so many street vendors with like little Pokemon Go related stuff. Like so many people.
The
like
comic store I used to work in had a Pokemon Go promotion where we would like people could come and we would drop a lure, because the store was a Pokestop, and so we would drop one of those paid lures and we could do a Pokemon walking tour of the area, and it was a fun thing, and there's all those jokes and memes about like the week that Pokemon Go dropped was the closest we'll ever get to world peace, but like there really was something there was something uniting about it, and and again, it is that idea, and they say it frequently in like in the theme songs and stuff, but like we all live in a Pokemon world. Like it was that idea that we could coexist not only with the creatures but with ourselves. Like it was a really cool experience.
It shows too just how much that Pokemon has like permeated through culture. And even if you're not even into it, you are at least aware of it, and you know at least maybe one or two of them. If you know Pikachu, and you maybe know one other one that you're like, oh, that's kind of cute. Yeah. But through that, you get into things like Pokemon Go, and it's like it allows you to explore the world more. And thinking about Pokemon Go again, just like all those times where like one person would be like, oh my gosh, there's a Snorlax over here, or oh my gosh, there's a Dragonite over here. You'd see like this wave of, I kid you not, 200 people just like stampeding to where that was. And then that was even before they had raids. So it's like that alone was probably what created raids. And it's funny too, they even down in downtown Ventura, over by I think the San Buenaventura, one of the places down there, they actually filmed a commercial for Pokemon Go.
Oh, so, very cool.
Yeah, me and a couple of other people were two of the extras that were in there.
Oh, fun.
But we were in a crowd of like 300 people, so you can't pick us out. But that was fun.
Darn. Well, it is just a really cool experience to see this franchise still thriving. I mean, I want to end off my part of the discussion on a personal anecdote, was that in preschool, I was a pretty outgoing kid, but one of my best friends who I still talk to, and we actually... she's in Alaska right now, so we're intending to catch up and watch Detective Pikachu together. But her mother was dropping her off for the first day of school, and she was sobbing and didn't want her mother to leave. And I walked right over to her, being the little kid that I am, and I said, "Hey, do you want to play Pikachu with me?" Because of course I didn't Pokemon. I was like, "Do you want to play Pikachu?" And she stopped crying. She went off and calmed down long enough for her mother to make the smooth exit. But that story still gets brought up. I'm sure it's going to get brought up if I have a wedding someday. That story's going to get brought up. But it was Pokemon, and that was the thing that we played all the time. And so when Detective Pikachu came out, we were texting each other, and we couldn't see it together. But we're gonna hang out hopefully over the holidays and catch up on it. But that's the thing that like we always stuck through with Pokemon, and anytime something Pokemon comes out, we're always sending it to each other, because that was our thing, and we're still playing Pikachu today, even though it's a little different than we did on the schoolyard. So
that's really cool. Yeah. I know for me too, personally, it's like, oh gosh, what is it? Like my dad, he used to collect a lot of trading cards. He collected a lot of stuff. He collected comics, trading cards. He was into a lot of like very geeky, nerdy stuff. He's unfortunately not around anymore, but one of the ways that I'm kind of able to sort of keep him on my mind and stuff like that is to kind of do a lot of the things that he used to do when he was still around. And one of those things was, collecting Pokemon, or not Pokemon cards, but just trading cards.
Mm-hmm.
So, he collected a lot of like Marvel and DC kind of cardboard stock stuff and stuff like that. So I kind of just do Pokemon cards, and, it's collecting Pokemon cards and just being within the realm of Pokemon and stuff like that. Like, kind of hits that point. It hits the point of like, I have to be super organized, and I just always have the ability to change how I organize my collection of cards whenever I want and stuff like that. And yeah, having my favorites and all that stuff, my connection with my younger brothers, we always talk about when we played Pokemon with each other growing up. And yeah, it's crazy just how much Pokemon has been really a part of my life, both like, actively and passively. Mm-hmm. So I love it. Yeah.
I think what it comes down to ultimately is written in the game's formula itself. Every generation, there's something new. Every generation of fans, every generation of Pokemon, new, different. There's something that you love in there. And that's exactly the reason why we keep coming back, because we got to catch them all.
Mm-hmm. And the best part is it's always evolving.
As the Pokemon franchise continues to grow and expand, it might seem endlessly daunting to become a Pokemon master. Still, it's a testament to the staying power of the universe to see how many people are still playing the games, collecting the cards, and imagining themselves alongside these iconic monsters. The man behind Deadpool even voiced Pikachu himself. There seems to be no limit how far the influence of this series reaches, even if you only know the original 151 or you've earned the gym badges in every region. One thing is for sure, we all live in a Pokemon world. Thank you for joining us. This has been Pokemon Then and Now. Do you enjoy listening to Then and Now? We are proud to bring you pop culture content completely ad-free, but that doesn't mean we don't need your support to help keep us going. Please take a moment to leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform and help spread the word about our podcast. We welcome fan feedback. Email us at podcasts@sideshow.com with your thoughts and suggestions for how we can make our shows even better. Plus, tune in for our full network of pop culture podcasts. See if your fan favorites make the cut in the Geek Culture Countdown, a bi-weekly podcast featuring pop culture top 10 lists. Hear exclusive interviews with celebrities and pop culture industry leaders as they let their Geek Side show in Look Who Showed Up. Join comedian Jeff May and his special guests as they discuss anything and everything in Sideshow's Sideshow. Then get all the latest pop culture news with our daily briefing, a 2-minute breakdown of the biggest geek headlines perfect for your Alexa or Google News briefings. We wouldn't exist without your continued support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to let your geek side show.